We acknowledge the Tasmanian Aboriginal people as the traditional custodians of this land, and we pay our respects to elders past, present and future who hold the memories, traditions, culture and hope of Tasmania's First Peoples. Lighthouse Tasmania also pays respects to the resilience and strength of the Tasmanian Aboriginal people and extends that respect to all First Australian peoples. I'd just like to introduce...
I can't hear anything.
You can't... Can you hear when Bruce talks?
Yeah, there is a microphone if you talk.
What were you saying?
Yep, thank you Sandra for that introduction. I'm Bruce Kay from National Archives. We have a little office here in Hobart, 3 staff. We also have offices all around the country, in every capital city. Prominent and obscure, I chose to call the talk, mainly because it gave me a little bit of scope to wander around the place, without locking me into anything too much, but it also, it's a bit like the archive. There's prominent things that are easy to find, and then there's the more hidden, difficult things that are not in the obvious places where you'd think they'd be. So this first little photo I've got on the slide there, that's at Gormanston near Queenstown. That's part of National Archives A1200 series, which is a very large photographic collection, and it was compiled by photographers employed by the Commonwealth, travelling around the countryside, taking photos for tourism purposes and just a record of migrants and immigration and things like that. So it's a big series, and you can search that by name and place. So that's a good one to keep in mind if you're looking for a particular building.
So sorry, Bruce, you used to search the place. Is that what you're saying in National Archives?
Yes, you can use our advanced search, which I'll tell you a little bit more. And there's also something called photo search. And if you're just looking for photos, then photo search is the system to use, but it's all located in the same area on our webpage. So yeah, people and buildings, they're pretty hard to separate. We all live in them, work in them, visit them, pass by them every day. So yeah, you can usually find a link. Everyone's got a link to a building in some shape or form in their lives. So yeah, I hope to show you mostly about what we have here in our Hobart office, but also some other series located in Canberra and Sydney and Melbourne. Speaking of which, so yeah, we have a lot of records on shelves, 350 shelf kilometres, and approximately 44 million records that we know of. We've just used estimations to come up with that figure. Nobody's actually counted them. And yeah, being the Commonwealth, most of them date from Federation, 1901. But, and I've got a record that I'll demonstrate this with later, where the agency existed prior to Federation, and it was transferred to Commonwealth responsibility. After 1901, we do hold the records prior to and after, but there is also some records that remain with the state. But that's the beauty of being in the same building. You can access both collections in the one place. And yeah, of course, it's all sorts of formats of records, from paper to film to maps and plans and some 3D objects. And in Tas there is 1.4 kilometres of records on shelves. About 65% of that has been described to our record search database, so you can search it by file name, but being an archive, the file name is not always helpful, but it's a start, and there's only about 5% that's been digitised. And nationally, there's about 30% that's been described, and I think they might be slightly higher in the digitisation stakes. But it's an ongoing process, and it's a pretty slow one, but we have recently got some funding for preservation, and the World War II service records are being proactively digitised and made available. So, yeah, we're getting there slowly.
Excuse me, I'm just not clear. Where would any items prior to 1901 be stored?
They'll be with the state archives.
Right.
Yeah. But there is some crossover. So, yeah, exploring our collection. So this is a screenshot of our webpage. So you can see the blue button down there with Go to Record Search. So Record Search is our search engine, which you can, the best way to use it is to use it in the advanced search function, which gives you lots of options. You can put in date ranges and exclude words and all kinds of things you can refine. But it does take a bit of getting used to. And if you do get stuck at any time, we are here 3 days a week, Wednesday to Friday, open to the public if you need assistance with using the website, finding things, ordering things. We're here. But it does, normally we do take some walk-ins, but it's depending on how full the history room is. We prefer you to book before you come. And we also have some extra websites on our linked from our webpage. That's Discovering Anzacs, which is World War I mostly, where you can actually contribute some things yourself, like memorabilia, private collections of photographs. You can upload that and have it alongside your relative who served in the First World War. You can also has scope for writing a little blog or story about your relative. And we also have exhibitions. We're planning one here in Hobart next July, and that's going to be Antarctic related, just out here in the Yorkport. It's going to be called Chilled, and it's just going to have a bit of a different look at life in the Antarctic for the expeditioners, what they got up to in their leisure time, and also some of the dangers and risks they faced outside. And the website does have I'm not sure how often, but it is constantly being updated with little stories and blogs that you can read and discover things about the archive. You just need to scroll down on the front page. It's one of those hidden things that occur on web pages. This was I was talking about before. So this is if you really want to get technical and know all about the archives, the Commonwealth Archives, you need to know about the Commonwealth Records system. I won't go too far into it, but that's it there in a triangle tree format. And most people are looking for the item, and you do that in an advanced search. But knowing which agency created the record and when is the best way of narrowing down your search to start with. Okay, so on the prominent side of things, we've got a collection of Commonwealth Records, maps and plans of Commonwealth buildings in Tasmania. There's about 1,100 drawings in the series. This one is public buildings at Strawn, which contains customs and post office. And we also have other Commonwealth-related buildings around the state in those plans, including quarantine station on Bruny Island, hospitals around the state, post offices, the army barracks, Anglesey, some of the forts around the place, Alexandra, Battery, and the signal station up at Mount Nelson. So yeah, a lot of them I like this drawing. They're very fine detail and nice colours. They don't do plans like this anymore. This little collection here, this comes from a series of photographs that are contained within a series in Melbourne, B5919, and it has photographs of post offices various around the state. It's been digitised and you can search it using the photo search function by name. I've just got a couple of examples up there, and sometimes they have multiple photos of the same post office with the period of time separated, so you can see the changes. But yeah, we've got Dover post office up in the top left. I used to go to Dover when I was a little tacker, so yeah, familiar with that one. And the Bell Reeve post office, and North Hobart and Scottsdale is the last one on the bottom right. And of course, yeah, we do have a lot of other post office related material. Where you can find various information. This one's just an index card from our series P2279. It includes names of staff who worked at the post office. This particular one refers to Bottomley retiring and Page taking over, and it's at the Liffey post office. They're an interesting little set. They include things like sometimes the post office names change, like down at Bruny Island, Alonna was called Mills Reef at one point. So yeah, that also has things like complaints from the public if they receive complaints. So it records who made the complaint and what it was about. The mail was a bit slow, or they didn't get their Christmas present, I don't know. And yeah, resignations, calamities such as robberies, and a range of activities are found in this little set of index cards. So yeah, it's a handy one to know about. And this is the one I was talking to you before about the crossover between the state and the Commonwealth with responsibility to records. So this one's the Lighthouse Evaluation of all the lighthouses in Tasmania. It consists of one folder, and it lists each lighthouse, how much they were valued at the time, and it was an agreed amount of £130,368, and it was signed in 1915, and the state charge the Commonwealth interest on that amount until the actual changeover was made of the lights. But yeah, it's an interesting little one-off. It's only one register in the series. And it includes a little, so for each lighthouse, it has a little description of the buildings, how the area of the land contained around the lighthouse. This one here is the Derwent Light, or the Iron Pot, the oldest lighthouse in Australia, I think. It was 1832 it was built, and yeah, as you can see, it had a two-storey residence on it. It'd be amazing if it was still here today. Be the #1 tourist attraction, I reckon, you know. But so I have to correct myself. It's the second oldest lighthouse in Australia. So yeah, the lighthouse, we do have other lighthouse series of records and correspondence ones, and that does give you some links to the families and the keepers that worked on the islands and the events that happened. Topical one at the moment is the dreaded pandemic that we're having. So back in 1919 there was the influenza pandemic. So there's some records of King Island with the pandemic running right through the community, and yeah, the head keeper corresponding with Hobart about getting some extra men to replace the sick keepers, and yeah, so you can find quite a few links to families and events in the Lighthouse series. The next set is, so this is P139, which is a series of records about war service homes. This one relates to the war service homes built after World War II. This particular file refers to Moona Gardens, which is now Burgess Street. I think it runs between Hopkins and Albert, or Hopkins, yeah, I'm not sure exactly, but yeah, it's out in Moona. And the specifications are all here for the houses from the contract that was awarded. The contract was awarded to Mr. Dawes, I think. Yep, Robert Dawes. So, yep, it's the erection and completion of a group of 10 weatherboard houses at Moona Gardens, Estate Moona. And yep, if you look through the file, it goes in to specify everything to build the house. So if you're so this, you can see here, that's the original plans from the War Service Division, and with the help of Google Maps, Street View, I was able to match up the house. I think it's missing the chimney. I don't know where that went. Maybe they got a heat pump. So yeah, that's another little handy series if you're trying to link homes with people and families. And yeah, there is a related series of index cards that has the name of the applicant at the time of sort of as the building progressed, it had entries about who the applicant for that home was.
Was that somebody who served in the war, or what was
Ye-
war service homes?
Yeah, so in this case they did it for World War I and World War II, but this particular one's for a serviceman, returned serviceman from World War II. Yeah, they were given a grant. It was funded by the Commonwealth but administered by the state, so that's another series of records where we cross over, complement each other. Moving on to another little interesting series of valuation field books, which is probably, this is the tax office recorded this series of records. So it's not the first place you'd think to look for some family history and building history, but there was so the tax officers travelled around the countryside valuing rural properties, mainly the bigger pastoral ones. So this collection consists of roughly 500 books for 500 properties around Tasmania. They give you a pretty comprehensive description of the property at the time. So it goes into things like the location of the buildings of the property, sheep dips, the state of the fences, how many stock it could carry, dry sheep, which is unirrigated sheep, so sheep that can survive without water on that property. So the interesting, I might have skipped a page. Oh yeah, so there's a, that's the sort of front page of the book where they break down the different values for the different things on the land, and you can see at the top there's tabs for fencing, timber treatment, other improvements, grazing land, buildings. So yeah, they're quite a nifty little record if you bought a property and wondered what it was like. 70, 80, 100 years ago. It's a good little collection.
Yeah, have those owners' names?
Yes, it does include the owner's name. Yep. So this particular one is about a property called Swanston, which is up the east coast. It was owned by the Salford brothers at the time. So I'll read this little passage from the page you can see there in the previous page. So it's in the general report section, and it is 27 miles from Oatlands and 20 from Parramatta, and only a very sparsely populated district around. The present owners have improved the fencing very much indeed, it being practically wire fence throughout. At one time, native tigers detracted very much from the value of this property, but now no losses occur through them. Generally diabase hills, steep and rocky, buildings very ordinary but fair order. So yeah, that's we've come a long way to from devaluing a property, too many tigers, to being extinct. But that was a quirky little find in the records. And then they also have a little map at the back that sort of sections off the farm, and it gives you a description of the property in that section. So you've got your tall, poor diabase hills, stringy bark peppermint, poor sandstone country. And similar with the building, so the building description here, it's telling you it's an old house of cut stone, iron and weatherboard, had a machine shed, a shearer's hut, a weatherboard cottage, machine sheds, slabs and shingles, stables, slabs and boards, shingles. So it gives you a bit of description of what they were made of. And this is a page that describes how many sheep or cattle the property was capable of carrying and the associated value. So it's got 600 ewes, 1,742 dry sheep and 40 dry cattle. And so this is a completely different series of records, but it's one of the Salford brothers at the time, and that's his World War II enlistment attestation form. So, best of my knowledge, I'm sure that's the same person. He, place of birth was Swanston. He enlisted in York Plains, and it actually says in the land valuation book, it associates another property, Stonehenge, with the Swanston property, and so that's the address given on the attestation form is Stonehenge. So yeah, it's one way of linking things up in the collection to get a bit of a picture of a person's life. Right, okay, so on to some of the, what I might call obscure or unexpected places to find a bit of history about buildings. So this one comes from our series P2556, and it's a series created by the CSIRO, Oceanographic Division. Mostly it was created before they moved to Tasmania. It was they were headquartered in New South Wales, and it's got all kinds of correspondence, scientific data, and things like Australia's role in negotiating the law of the sea, dumping at sea. There's a policy on dumping at sea that got changed, and various fishing industries all around Australia. Anything from rock lobster to whaling, abalone, prawns. It's quite an extensive series. But what you wouldn't expect to find in here is a napkin from the Silver Sands Silver Sands Hotel in Vishnu. It's a very quirky little napkin, souvenir napkin. That was just the conference was a conference about the topic of the fire was held in Vishnu, so that's how it came to be in the fire. Obviously, someone thought it was artistic and worthwhile of putting in the fire, but you can see the farmer down the bottom shooting rabbits, and some guy's pleased at punch with a crayfish above his head, and that's quite a little interesting little bit of memorabilia and history about the place.
So who designed it?
Good question. Can't see on there who the designer is, but that'd be a good little investigation for someone. Some Vishnu locals might know. And this is actually a postcard from the State Library collection that I've slipped into my presentation because it's nice and colourful, and it shows you the Silver Sands in its heyday before Jane Cameron got hold of it. But I think there is a development application in to improve it. Who knows, it might get back to its heyday. What have we got here? Okay, so This one is a P123 land acquisition file. So whenever the Commonwealth embarked on building something new, they had to acquire their land first, of course. So this file's quite extensive. They can be, I think this particular one is, there's 8 parts to it. It's about Dowsing's Point, when they originally acquired the land in 1913, with the intention of building a submarine and torpedo base on the Derwent, which was not something I knew they had planned, but yeah, and it mostly consists of correspondence between the owner, Thomas Stump, and the Commonwealth in regard to a bit of haggling over the price and some extra compensation for a road that wasn't included in the original acquisition.
At least the submarines would have fit under the bridge.
And then the later parts of the file refer to disposing of some of the land to the state for the Bowen Bridge, for the access to the Bowen Bridge. And probably looking at the map, I'd say it's something to do with the techno park and all that sort of stuff that's out there as well. They must have split it off. And of course, yeah, today Derwent Barracks, the Army Barracks, is still operating out there. There's some other files in that, interesting ones in that one, the Government Centre in Collins Street, so there's some photos in there of the streetscape before they knocked it all down, so that's interesting to see. I think there was a Turkish bathhouse or something there at one point, somebody told me that. And the submarine there, that's from our collection. I just sort of toss that in there. That's the AE1, which was Australia's first submarine. And that's photos taken in off of Cockatoo Island in Sydney.
What age is that photo, please?
Sorry?
What time is that photo taken?
The submarine, 1913, I think. Yeah, roughly. This one I chose just for the proximity to where we are right now. So it's a Department of Employment Industrial Relations file. It's the director's file. And the office was located just here, across in the car park, in Murray House. So it's not, I guess the file is not the obvious place you look to find out a bit of building history. But yeah, during the time of the file contents, it was the Vietnam War and conscription and all that sort of stuff happening at that period of time. There's an envelope of photos, interesting photos, so you can see some of the protest action that was happening at the time. It also includes some the university students that were protesting quite a bit about conscription and the Vietnam War. So it's got a few examples of the posters they had up around the place. And John Andrew Tully on the 5th of April 1970 at 8:45. I don't know if you can see, for the picture you can see the bullet holes in the window, so he shot 26 bullets into the window, which was the director's office. Being Sunday night, he was assuming nobody was there. He took his purpose wasn't to injure anyone. He just wanted to make a bit of a statement. And the report in the file states that staff were shocked, but morale remained good. But I was wondering if maybe the director wasn't too popular. So yeah, that's the view across the Tattersalls hotel just across the road. And see a few bullet holes in that one too. The next file I've got is again, I'm just sort of demonstrating, where you sort of come across things where you don't expect them. So this one's the shearing. It's another Department of Labour and National Service file, and it's about the shearing industry dispute in 1956. It's titled, the dispute is titled the Queen versus Grazing Association of New South Wales and other organisations in Melbourne, related to award wages, paying a minimum wage to the farm workers and the shearers. But the interesting thing from a land and people perspective is within that file is a list of all the shearing sheds around Tasmania and the name of their owners at the time, the number of shearers employed at each property, whether they had hand or machine-powered shears, and the number of sheep carried on the property. And it tallies all that up and states that in July 1956 there were 2.7 million sheep and 5,200 property owners, the majority of which were small operators supplementing farm income from a small flock of sheep. But the list only lists properties with more than 1,000 sheep, so the bigger properties. And the next one we've got comes from probably going a bit more prominent now. Everyone knows where the chocolate factory is. So I'm not sure if everyone knows, but it's the centenary of Cadburys next year. Cadburys in Hobart. So this little series of photographs that comes from our A1200 series, which is located in Canberra. And that was created, I think I told you before, by photographers employed by the Commonwealth to take tourism and document the immigration program at the time. So you can see you've got the factory and the workers out on the grounds there and some of the homes that were built. And to complement that, so we've actually got a couple of individuals that work there. Danilo Zanella, he's pouring the cocoa beans there. We've got his alien registration form, which details his migration in 1955. It's got a little photograph of him there at the time. And the other one relates to Mrs. Theresa Pless from Germany. So we've got a complimentary photo and record of migration as well. And similar here, we've got another couple of workers at the Cadbury factory and their associated application for naturalisation. At the time, Barbara had lived in Australia for 3.5 years, and she and her husband Horst had a house in Claremont, and she applied for naturalisation in 1960. And at this point I was hoping to show you a little video that was produced by our national office. Features comedian Tim Ross, and I don't know if you know, he has a pretty strong interest in architecture. He can explain the connection between the archives and people and what you can use the collection for. You can do it in a more eloquent fashion than me. And yeah, hopefully if we can get it to work, it might leave you with a bit of a warm fuzzy feeling when you leave.
The National Archives is our archive, and one particular image can set off a million different stories in our mind. My name's Tim Ross. I am an architecture and design nerd, a comedian, a writer, a documentary maker. I wear a lot of hats. Some of them fit okay sometimes. But I suppose the thing I like the most, and the one through line through most of my work, is I like telling Australian stories. And I just find myself, trawling through the photo search, looking for things that interest me, I suppose. And then realising, this is a really great resource for a whole bunch of different projects. And how can I use these photos to help me tell stories or to create new projects? The National Archives is a huge part of what I do now. I suppose the motel book is the best illustration of that, because all the images are from the National Archives. People pick up on things like cars, or funny, I've got one in the book where there's an emu going across the road, and there's an old station wagon there, and they're so evocative. I think the favourite thing that I found in the National Archives happened when I was making a film on Esmond Dorney, a Tasmanian architect, for the Designing a Legacy project. 2 of his houses on one site burnt to the ground, and they lost almost all of their photos. And I stumbled on a series of 4 photos. And then there was this wonderful photo of Esmond, I think in his early 70s, and he's got a mattock and he's out there gardening. And it's one of it's the few photos that exist of him. And so not only was I able to use it for the film, but to be able to say to the family, I don't think you've seen this, but here's a photo of your house, and here's a photo of your dad. I like the idea that it's a wonderful resource for creative people that's probably not being used enough. No matter what your interest is, there's so many things there. If it happened in the past, it's there. Whether you're a graphic designer, or you're an architect, or a filmmaker, or in the advertising industry, all those things, it's there as a sort of, I think, a creative resource. The most important thing is that the National Archives is our archive. And one particular image can set off a million stories in everyone's minds. And so an image that doesn't directly relate to our house particularly can relate in so many different ways. If there was something that they mean to me is that it's our stories, our history that's accessible, that's there for all of us. You can go there, but you can do it at home, you can do it on your phone, and you can take a walk through the stories of the past.
Okay, thanks everyone for coming. If you've got any questions,
Got to get your chocolates.
oh yes,
But you've got to share them with us.
you'll be lucky.
Share an afternoon tea. I'd just like to thank Bruce again for a very informative talk. Did you want to have any questions?